It's 5:59, so I think I'm going to call the meeting to order. Andrew, are you ready?
We're live.
I will call the April 1st Select Board meeting to order. As a preliminary matter, this is the Chair of the Select Board, Don Holgate. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Rita Higgins?
Yes.
Christy Ferrantella?
Yes.
Jason Bridges?
Yes.
Matt Fee?
Yes.
And staff members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Town Manager Libby Gibson?
Present.
Police Chief Bill Pittman?
Present.
Board of Health Director Roberto Santamaria?
Present.
Director of Culture and Tourism Janet Schulte?
Present.
Assistant Town Manager Rachel Day?
I'm here.
Assistant Town Manager Greg Tivnan?
Present.
Finance Director Brian Turbot?
Present.
And then in addition, we have Nancy Holmes, our town clerk.
Present.
Gary Shaw, the CEO of the hospital.
Present.
And we will have, we do have our town moderator, Sarah Alger. Sarah, can you hear me? You'll need to unmute.
I can hear you. I lost my cell phone and I can't get my camera to work. So I'm here.
Okay, just text me when you want to speak. And we also have our town council, Lauren Goldberg. Lauren, can you hear me? Okay. Good evening. This open meeting of the Nantucket Select Board is being conducted remotely, consistent with Governor Baker's executive order of March 12, 2020, due to the current state of emergency in the Commonwealth due to the outbreak of COVID-19 virus. In order to mitigate the transmission of the COVID-19 virus, we have been advised and directed by the Commonwealth to suspend public gatherings, and as such, the governor's order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location. Further, all members of public bodies are allowed and encouraged to participate remotely. The order, which you can find posted with agenda materials for this meeting, allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless such participation is required by law. This meeting will have YouTube access during public comment. If members wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. For this meeting, the Select Board is convening by video conference via Zoom app as posted on the town's website, identifying how the public may join. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that all attendees are participating by video conference. Accordingly, please be aware that other folks may be able to see you and to take care not to share your screen of your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All supporting materials that have been provided members of this body are available on the town's website unless otherwise noted. The public is encouraged to follow along using the posted agenda unless the chair notes otherwise. We are now turning to the first item on the agenda. Before we do so, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. I, the chair, will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After they conclude their remarks, the chair will go down the line of members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, please remember to mute your phone or computer when you're not speaking. Please remember to speak clearly in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. For any response, please wait until the chair yields the floor to you and state your name before speaking. For items with public comment, after members have spoken, the chair will afford public comment as follows. Staff will activate the chat feature on YouTube. Members of the public who have comments or questions can use this feature to communicate with the public body. Instructions are on the town's website. The chair and our staff will do our best to address the questions and comments either during the meeting or after the meeting. Each vote taken will be by roll call vote. I will call everyone's name. And when members do wish to speak, please raise your hand to alert me. With all of that being said, I'm trying a new thing with my background. I'm going to have a Nantucket photo as my background. I'm intending to change them every week. This is courtesy of my father, who has become quite a Nantucket photographer. We will accept the agenda as printed, except for one addition. Under new business, we have a noise waiver request from Stop and Shop to keep their refrigeration trucks running with the increased demand for food. So we'll take that up under new business. I will go to the town manager for announcements and to go through the different people who will be speaking on the COVID-19 updates.
Thank you, Madam Chair. There are no announcements. And with respect to the weekly update, we've got a bit of an update about the emergency orders. So with respect to emergency order number 1, and I would look to the chief to supplement this if there's anything to add. But with respect to emergency order number 1, this was supplemented by a Board of Health order on Monday, the 30th, I think it was Monday. And that order has been posted online and a press release issued, and a number of FAQs have come out of it, which we've also posted online, and we've been fielding a number of emails today about it. Basically, subsequent to us receiving guidance from Senator Sear with respect to the issue of construction and landscaping, which were seeming to be essential services allowed through the governor's stay-at-home order. We had a phone call on Sunday with town officials from Martha's Vineyard, the select board chair, town council, and town council from some of the vineyard towns, as well as a number of state officials, including Senator Sear and Representative Fernandez. And pursuant to that phone call, Senator Sear alerted us that local boards of health have the authority to issue orders to address public health emergencies, taking into consideration local conditions that might potentially differ from what the state has issued. So that is what has been done. Basically, the Board of Health order continues the order in place under the authority of the Board of Health. It clarifies that construction and landscaping are not essential services. It allows with respect to construction, 1 worker to work at an unoccupied job site on building or an unoccupied building on maintenance like repairs without any additional materials being brought in, and in accordance with CDC guidelines for sanitation and decontamination. We've gotten a lot of email, I know all the board members have as well, about this, and there are obviously a lot of efforts to, I'm just going to say, work around this. And I know that we all know people want to get back to work and they have a lot of work to get done, as does the town. But this is becoming problematic. I think I alerted some of you through an earlier email today that what this possibly seems to have resulted in is on Tuesday, yesterday, there were a handful of people who came off the High Line on the morning boat, not very many at all. Today, there were close to 100 people who appear to be workers going to job sites. So this has opened up the floodgates again, which is the wrong direction to be going in. So that is an issue that we need to think about closing. The order that the Board of Health adopted does not contain an end date. It is written to end when the order is lifted. So that was an update about that particular order. The other orders remain in place, which were order number 2, personal care services, temporary shutdown, and the stay-at-home order, which is pretty much what the state has done. Although, as we now know, the governor has extended the stay-at-home order for the state through May 4th, extended from April 7th. So that is something that we probably ought to be letting our citizens know that it is the same thing here locally. Is there anything we want to add from the team about the orders? I'm hearing no.
Good.
I don't know if the board members have any comments or questions, or if town council would want to add anything. Lauren, you got to unmute.
I'm happy to, if that would be useful. I can just reiterate that the town was informed it has the ability for the Board of Health to regulate the conduct of businesses, and that it can make determinations about what is safe for the people of Nantucket. And so I would say if you are having issues, if you are still having issues, or if it seems like there's more of an issue with the form of the construction ban, then that's something that the Board of Selectmen, the Select Board, can certainly revisit, as well as the Board of Health.
One additional item to make mention of: the governor had a press conference this afternoon, and one of the last takeaways in the conference was to confirm that local boards of health or local municipalities have the authority to determine what is essential and non-essential in their towns, basically, which just reiterates what we've already done. We are getting some emails from people who say we've called the governor's office and they say that landscaping is an essential service. That may be true in other areas of the state, but it is not true on Nantucket.
Rita?
Madam Chair, can I just add one more thing to that?
Lauren, you, and then Rita.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to add that the characterization of a service as essential essentially means that the governor was providing permission for that business to continue to operate generally. But the way that it was explained to us by the governor's staff is that that doesn't override the community's ability to determine what's not safe for the community. And so regardless of how the whether landscaping or construction or restaurants or anything else is characterized, if the town determines that it cannot be carried out safely, the town retains the right to curtail that activity. So.
Thank you.
Lauren sort of mentioned what I was going to just try and make sure I understood correctly and how I've been interpreting it when I'm looking through the various guidelines and the recommendations that we're getting. But essentially, a service is essential if it directly relates to maintaining public health. So if your business is not and your activities are not directly related to public health, then it's probably not essential. So providing food, healthcare, that kind of thing is essential, but landscaping is not directly related to public health. So it wouldn't be essential, is what I've been hearing and reading.
Jason?
Thank you for the clarification, Libby. A lot of the calls that I got were from caretakers, landscapers, cleaners who don't want to go to work, that are getting calls from their clients because they were, picking apart that last paragraph in the supplemental order that said a single worker. So they were saying, get that cleaner to my house because it has to be open. And so I got a lot of calls saying, what do I say back? Can I get any clarification? So I think we have it now, but I think that's a lot of where some of this is coming from. I know there's always going to be people that are going to circumvent it and try to push it no matter what. But the most calls I got were trying to figure out what the right thing to do was and having questions on just that last paragraph. So, but I think you did a good job of explaining it, and Lauren, thank you.
Any other board questions? Matt?
Yeah, I'm disappointed 100 people were on the boat yesterday. I mean, and I know I had the same thing that Jason had. I had a bunch of people contact me concerning the last paragraph that said basically one person on one site. And it's clarified now. That made it seem like that it was being opened up. I think it may be too early, but we should be thinking about it. I think, as I said last week, and before we do it, there should be a process in place so we know who's working where, how long they're going to be there, all those types of things, so it can be done safely. I don't think it should be done sort of right away, but I think we should be thinking about that and put the right parameters in place.
Madam Chair, if I might just comment, we've been consulting with the hospital very regularly about our guidelines and measures and what can we do to keep the community safe and how do we prevent the spread of the virus. And they've been very helpful with encouraging us to maintain the measures. And definitely for now. And as we're coming up here, Gary can maybe speak to what the hospital is experiencing and what the expected surge is looking like over the next perhaps 2 to 3 weeks, which is what we're hearing for Massachusetts and the island, of course. And I think now we all certainly totally understand where Matt is coming from and where everybody else is coming from who wants to get to work. But it does go back to how do we keep these things safe? Getting people's names of working at the job sites and things like that is extremely difficult to manage. And we just don't have the public safety staff to do that. We've had to cut back on the staff so they don't get contaminated and infected, so we have people to come back in case people do. So it's kind of a no-win situation for us right now.
Maybe Gary wanted to make some comments now.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Well, I will tell you that right now what we're seeing today, we have our 8th case that we've reported. And just a moment, let me just open this text. We've tested 135 individuals at our drive-through and in our emergency room. We've had the 8 positive tests that I've mentioned. We've had 96 that are negative. We've got 31 that are pending. Out of that, we had 14 samples today. And what we're seeing is that the cases or the patients that are coming in now are almost all meeting the clinical criteria for testing, which means there's probably part of our pool that's circulating. They're getting sicker. They're starting to come in. We're fortunate that we haven't had to hospitalize anybody. Folks are going home. They're sheltering at home. But what we're seeing in that low caseload right now is definitely because of the efforts of physical distancing and sheltering at home. I will tell you that this virus does not care who it gets on. It's if you are contaminated with it, most likely you'll experience what it has to offer, and we want to prevent that by continuing to have social distancing, physical distancing, and keep these measures in place. If I could use an analogy, I think I used it once before this week. We're just seeing the outer bands of a major hurricane starting to slap us, and so we're seeing the initial cases. And how big this storm becomes as it comes ashore in the next 10 to 14 days is going to be dependent on how you all in the community social distance yourself. This disease is extremely contagious. We know it's dangerous. And if we are not distancing ourselves, not using good hand washing techniques, it will have a rapid incline in caseload. And of course, we're on a small island. You have the most dedicated medical professionals I have ever worked with that are prepared to address everything that we can with the small facility and equipment we have. But that is not enough to take care of hundreds of people if we have a surge in cases and we have to rapidly hospitalize people. So what you are doing through your leadership in this town and through your leadership, quite frankly, as individuals in the community, is you are keeping it at bay and you are knocking it down. And this is not the time to let up. We are wanting to increase our testing capability. As you know, nationally, it's very slow to be able to do any community testing of large numbers of individuals. At some point, we hope we can do that so we can see what type of virus is circulating, but that's just not available now. In fact, we have been experiencing that as we get testing samples to the mainland, depending on who has the ability to do rapid testing. When they announce that they have that capability, they're quickly overwhelmed with everybody sending samples to those sites. So you get a day or two of good service, and then it starts to be 3, 4, 5, 6-8 days before a test comes back. So we are only doing those tests now that meet CDC criteria at our drive-through or in our emergency room. But we hope in the near future that there's more manufactured capability and we can address a larger population in the community. This is not the time to back down from what we're putting in place. I've said before, it's not sexy, it's not fun, but it does work. I promise 10 times it works. But if you let up now, you run the risk of overwhelming your community. I can't say it any stronger.
Thank you.
I don't know if anybody has any questions for Gary.
Anybody?
Okay, I'll go on to the next couple things. And I also want to just say thank you very much to Gary. He was supposed to try to take a tiny little bit of time off today, and he was going to not be at the meeting tonight to give him a little bit of a break, but he is here. So Gary, thank you. Okay, our next little bit of an update and report is public information. And Greg, I think it has just a little update about outreach efforts dedicated. We have the dedicated email and the dedicated phone line, which we mentioned last week. Those are still pretty active and we're getting emails and phone calls on them. And I'm just checking my notes here. So Greg.
Yep. Yes, hi, good evening. We're just, Florencia Rulo and I, busy the past week. We're just trying to keep up with everybody in the incident response team to push out these messages. As Mr. Shaw was just saying, we are trying to convey the message that the protocols work. For the past week, I think we've answered more about landscapers getting back to work, construction workers getting back to work. And we've been trying to communicate back that, and they've been saying that, well, the island looks pretty good. We only have 6 or 7 confirmed cases at the time. We're trying to push back the message that it's true. We only have that many because of our protocols. It's not the time to start, easing up on the gas. So we try to reiterate that our website is our #1 outreach tool. We've had pretty good engagement with that. We just some statistics from this time compared to last year. For the month of March last year, we had about 28,500 hits on our website. This past month, we had 78,660, or an increase of about 50,000. And page views, mostly going to the Corona page, exceeded 105,000 the past month. That's an increase of 175% over last year of coming to the website. So we see our website as a very important tool to convey these messages. We want the public to go to the website, and I'm also asking the board and everybody else, check out the information. What's missing, let us know. How can we reach out to the community better? We, off the website, you can also sign up for email alerts through the news and noteworthy section. Town employees are being communicated through our network alerts off of the website. But we're also very actively using Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. So the past, since March 10, we've mostly Florencia Rulo, who's done outstanding work, has over 70 posts and updates on social media. We have 27 news flashes out there, 11 press releases. And we've quite regularly speak with the Inquirer and Mirror, WACK, and we've been in contact with the Boston Globe, NECN, NBC 10, Fox, WBZ, NPR, you name it. So we want feedback from the community about how we can get these messages out. That's pretty much all I have, Libby.
Thank you. I think that going back a little bit to the emergency orders, we do need to discuss this issue about the one person at the job site problem. It's not totally clear to people as to what type of work that is. We've been maintaining that it's essential work, or, you know, it's a one-person job to fix something in an unoccupied house. It isn't really meant to install an electrical system or install the plumbing system or, you know, things like that. It's to fix a step that's broken because you can't get into the house because the step is broken or a door is off the hinges, little things like that. But it is quite clearly being latched onto as, you know, full on work going on in there. So and as a result of what we've seen with all the people coming off the boat, our recommendation at the emergency management level is for the board to think about making a recommendation or a request to the Board of Health to revisit this at the earliest possible opportunity. So I don't know if you want to have any discussion about that, but we keep seeing this flow of people coming off the boat.
Jason?
Thank you, Libby. You beat me to it. I was just going to suggest and see what the EOC and Roberto and Rita think on the Board of Health if removing that last paragraph, if that would, in addition to, I know we did FAQs, one more, whatever, exactly what you just said, Libby, putting that in print for everybody here, and then removing that paragraph. If it doesn't hurt the order, would that stop the 100 people on the boat? Does that make sense? I'd be happy to support that if everybody else did.
You guys should probably have a talk about it, but we think that yes, that does make sense, and we think we need to get that paragraph removed, and that will end the who can do what in a house. I mean, there's all kinds of workarounds. Like I said at the beginning, trying to go around. Can so-and-so come in the morning? So-and-so come in the afternoon? It's not a rotating work schedule. It was, you know, like we were trying to say earlier. But I'm not sure how quickly Roberto can get the Board of Health together, but this might need to be another emergency meeting like they had on Monday, perhaps tomorrow. But I would definitely want to hear from Rita about it too.
Yeah, Rita, go ahead.
No, I absolutely agree that we should revisit it and ASAP. You know, the paragraphs that come before it, to me, when we were discussing at the Board of Health, to me and to us, I think it was fairly clear that it was intended to mean for maintenance purposes, for emergency purposes, not as a green light to try and tip away at construction projects. So I think that if we need to take that out, the intention was to try and help people out as much as possible and make it clear. But if it's confusing things more, then I think it does need to come out, and the board should discuss that.
I just hesitate a little bit with continuing to change stuff and creating more confusion. But I don't know if the language can be clarified so that it really states the original intent.
That might be something for Lauren to weigh in on, but it would probably take a whole bunch more language to do that. And we already are getting complaints that the language is very confusing as it is, and nobody can understand it because they're not attorneys.
Right. Board members, other thoughts? Matt, Christy, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I agree with what Jason and Rita have been saying about revisiting it. I wouldn't be against removing it. I think things are changing every day and people are used to things changing every day. So the fact that we have to update it, it wouldn't be confusing. I think it would actually help people because right now there are so many questions about what's allowed and how they're trying to, you know, find the loophole and get around it. And I was especially alarmed to hear of the number of people coming from off island. I think that's really going to hurt all the efforts that we've been doing locally. So I would be in favor of really trying to put pressure on the Board of Health to revisit this.
Roberto? Oh, I can't hear you. We've lost your mic. Still can't hear you. Can anybody hear him?
What are you going to say? I can say it. Yeah, I'm just saying that pressure isn't necessarily. Oh, there we go. Pressure isn't that necessary at this point because I believe 3 board members have already called me today, and now I'm hearing from a 4th board member. The wording is very confusing. So I think removing that last paragraph is probably, at this point, the best move. It removes a lot of the confusion, and it's very unfortunate that we tried this as an experiment and we had that incredible increase of people coming in from the boat. I'm already seeing on social media where people are saying that that's a lie, but those are the official numbers. Those are the numbers we got this morning. It's not a lie. We did get over 100 people coming in this morning. Regardless of the way people think they've counted people on the boat, those are the official numbers, and those are the numbers we're using. People are coming here and people are skirting the rule already. We tried the experiment and it failed. So I will ask my board if they can connect tomorrow or at the very latest Friday morning, and I will request to remove this section. It's just too confusing, and we just can't enforce everyone breaking the law like that.
Thank you. Matt?
Yeah, I'm not I'm surprised to hear that we try to experiment. I thought that we were just clarifying what was existing. And for me, it was, when I read it, I was confused. I thought it was going to the one person, one site, without a process. So I was confused when I first read it. So and I'm pretty close to this because I'm in all these meetings and getting emails all day. So I can just imagine what the public thought of it. And I agree with everyone else. We can remove it. I agree we should go another couple of weeks. But over that couple of weeks, I'm pushing again for a process so we know who's working where. We can check those job sites. We can control it. And otherwise, I think people are going to just start breaking it. There are a bunch of people who already are breaking it. And, there are people dropping groups of painters off at job sites and taking the truck away. They paint all day and a truck comes and picks them up, from what I've heard. So I think there's things like that are going on that we still need to make sure we're out there policing and patrolling in some manner. And whoever's supplying these guys, we've got to find a way to speak to them and make sure that is stopping. I mean, if people are bringing it over in other manners, or if people are picking it up, that's part of the problem too. So, and I know that's what the EOC is dealing with, and I'll leave them to deal with it, but it's no good if they're still getting the materials.
I don't know what we would say about the material issue, but we are getting pretty routinely calls in about people working, and the police are going to the sites and shutting them down as they can. So there is definitely police visits and action occurring, but there's way more of them than there are of us, basically. So the one person per job site thing was, I don't know if experiment was the right word. It was an intent to relax the order of no construction except for absolute emergencies, which were coming through the EOC. The one person so that was the one person on the site was trying to allow people to do a little bit of work, one person only. There would be no vehicle issue. There would be no materials coming in. It was meant to be much more controlled. However, it isn't. It isn't getting controlled the way that we thought maybe people would react to, especially if we have close to 100 people coming off the boat to work. And we've heard anecdotally, as you probably all have, that different contractors are saying, well, I'm going to send, one person to each of the houses that I've got going, and I'm just going to have them finish stuff inside. That's not what this is meant to be.
Yeah, it's created confusion as well with other industries, the landscapers quite specifically, and then the house cleaning industry. Everyone feels like if the builders can send in one person, then they should be able to send in one person house by house. So, I mean, if it's really going to be effective in the right way, as the hospital is asking for, keeping everything stopping the spread, as Gary's hat says there, for the next couple of weeks as we see how things peak. I mean, we are growing in numbers day by day, it seems, even though we're doing better than a lot of places. Roberto?
Does this work? Okay. That's actually a really good point that Don just made. The reason our numbers are so low is because we've issued these sorts of edicts and emergency orders. I've already reached out to our colleagues over in the Cape and the health colleagues in the Cape and in other towns. The ones that haven't seen this, especially in the Cape, Brendan, do you have the number? What was it today? 200 cases already in Barnstable County? And they're having very similar issues than we are. We got ahead of this, which shows tremendous leadership from the town and the hospital where we work together. We got ahead of it. That's why we're seeing low numbers. What we're seeing a lot, and a lot of our emails that are coming in, and a lot of the social media is saying, well, we don't have the numbers. Yes, we don't have them because of this. We lift the ban, we let people work. We have enough trouble enforcing the fertilizer ban, for example, on a good year. Now with people we're trying to enforce every single job site is just not going to be working. And Barnstable just updated to 255 a few minutes ago. So this is working. And I highly recommend that we stay strict. We stay strict, and I really agree with removing that last paragraph.
Yeah, I mean, I really did appreciate it. I thought it was a good way to allow a little bit of stuff to go on. But what's really alarming to me, and I hope that we can get the exact numbers from the High Line, is hearing that many people came off the boat today. Because that's exactly how we're going to have an influx of spread from people coming from all different places. Did anybody else have any other comments? Sure, we're going to have some public comments coming.
So are we hearing that the board would want to endorse a recommendation or recommend to the Board of Health to meet as soon as possible to remove that last paragraph?
I think the Board of Health should the consensus is that they should discuss it again.
Okay, you got that. Roberto is saying he would prefer a roll call vote, and the Board of Health probably would as well.
Okay. Is there a motion?
I'll make the motion to ask the Board of Health to revisit this and remove the paragraph and any additional language if needed.
I'll second.
Okay, by roll call, Rita Higgins.
Rita, aye.
Matt Fee.
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella.
Aye.
Jason Bridges.
Aye.
Okay, Don Holgate, aye. So you have your vote. Matt?
Yeah, and just a quick comment. I think you're sort of saying, well, 2 weeks is giving expectations again. I think people have to realize this may be, this may be the new normal. We may, for a while, we may have to find a way to have a process and find a way to enforce. I know it's quote unquote not possible right now, but we may not have a choice. We may have to make it possible to allow it to be safe.
Christy, go ahead.
I was just going to follow up on Roberto's comment about, how we've all been working together to keep our numbers low. And I think one of the biggest things that we need as a community is for those in the construction and building groups to kind of have our backs in this and support and tell everybody, not to be opening and not trying to be going around this. I know that in Massachusetts today, the Massachusetts Building Trades Council all supported having Governor Baker put a statewide construction ban. So it's really something we're trying to do to keep our community safe. And if you're trying to go around the loophole, you're not helping our community and you're not helping us stay safe. So as much as you can, be an advocate for our community and try to all of us work together, and we're going to get through this together.
Thank you. That was a good point to make. Rita?
I just want to follow up. Thank you for that, Christy. I also want to make the point, because we are getting a lot of texts and emails, and 4 out of 5 board members are small business owners, and the 5th member works with the Chamber of Commerce. So we don't make any of these decisions lightly, and we absolutely understand the position everyone is in, and we would love to be working as well. But it doesn't really feel like it's in our hands to just say, go back to work. Right now, it's, I know I'm really taking my lead from the hospital, and I think the state, we are ahead. It feels like we're a little step ahead of where the state is at. So it's good to hear that they're backing it up. But I think, like Christy said, keeping our community safe is first and foremost.
Thank you. I think that there might be some people from home who are a little bit confused, but maybe we can take some public comments after we get through the rest of the updates.
Sure. So next, we, as you know, and a couple of you are on it, we developed established an economic impact work group that Janet Schulte, our Culture and Tourism Director, is heading up. And I think there was a meeting this week.
We had, good evening. We've had 2 meetings. We had one last Monday and one last Friday. We've also spun off a subgroup to look at a survey that will cover all sectors. But let me back up. In those meetings that we've had, we get general updates from the sectors that are represented in the meeting. We've had some suggestions what the town could do that have been forwarded to town administration and or the appropriate department. We've discussed questions to include on that economic impact survey that will be sent to all sectors of our economy on the island. We've determined how, and the purpose of that survey is to determine how businesses and organizations are being challenged by the COVID-19 situation. We'll take the results from that to be shared with a variety of organizations, including the town, the chamber, the Maine Community Foundation, financial institutions, and other organizations that may come up as we meet and brainstorm together. That information will be used to provide information for advocacy and lobbying for state and federal efforts. It will provide information to inform local decision-making, and it will assist in identifying the types of programs that will help businesses and organizations weather the storm. And we're planning a follow-up survey. We'll hope to send that one out next week. We're planning a follow-up survey in 4 to 6 weeks to see what changes are for businesses and organizations. The town employees on the task force have been able to provide information or receive information relative to their work, and that includes licensing, planning, and human services. And that's been a good exchange, and I think maybe head off some of the rumor mill. I am also participating in the Chamber's task force, and Christy is on the town task force. We have similar missions. We're figuring out how we're different from each other, but I think at this point it's good that there's overlap and some kind of consistency in the kind of information that we're hearing and responses that we're giving. And finally, I've been working with Greg and Florencia to create a resource page on the town's coronavirus site with information for businesses and nonprofits. Whenever I receive new information or useful ideas, we create a link to that and send information out. I inform cultural organizations that new stuff is there. And we create a link to the appropriate agency, organization, or department for people to get current information about resources that are available to them, whether at the federal, state, or local level in some cases.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Anybody?
Thank you, Janet. Next is...
Sorry, Rita has a question.
Sorry. I just had a quick question, Janet, as to whether we're looking at impacts to individuals in addition to businesses. I brought it up earlier to Dawn that I am concerned as well about some kind of rent relief or rents, utilities, bills, and I don't know what we can do, but I don't know if that's something that your group is looking at all, or if it's just focused on businesses.
The current focus is on business and cultural organizations. We did have initially, at Jason's behest, concerns about basic human needs, and Taylor Hills came in and talked to us about what's going on there. So I think we'd have to think about what's the appropriate vehicle to find that information out and get it out. And I know the Community Foundation is doing tons of work to reach out through the human services agencies to find the populations that need help. And that might be a more useful effort than figuring out what the needs are, to providing resources to meet those needs.
Right. Thank you.
Welcome.
Okay, thank you, Janet. I think that's really important about the individuals. And so Taylor, I know, has been working very hard on a whole bunch of areas and issues for how individuals could potentially get assistance. Town services status. So town offices remain closed now, and they were intended to be closed definitely through April 7th or 6th. But now that the governor has extended the stay-at-home order through May 4th, we believe that the town offices will have to remain closed now until at least then. And obviously, we're going to be revisiting this every week. So as soon as we're able to get some people back to work, that would be our intent. But again, it has to be safe, and we have to be over this sort of like surge hump, I guess. Essential services are only occurring right now, and some are occurring remotely. I know there was a little bit of an issue with DPW doing some work over the last few days. That has ended. And there is a pretty high concern on the DPW that we are going to be way behind going into summer. Obviously, there's a lot of things not happening right now in the town, obviously with everybody, but in the town, it's going to really start getting noticeable with streets, brush cutting, potholes, all that stuff is going to start getting pretty difficult. And until it's a true emergency, meaning somebody could die because it's not getting fixed, or it's a very severe public health or safety hazard or issue, it is not going to get done. So that's just something that we're going to be struggling with for a little bit. We have a daily call with our emergency response team, our emergency management team. That's a bunch of different people. I guess I'll name them if I can remember everybody. It's the two chiefs, police and fire, our emergency management coordinator, Brendan Coakley, public health director, Roberto Santa Maria, the two assistant town managers, Rachel Day and Greg Tivnan, our public outreach coordinator, Florencia Rulo. Gary Shaw is on it as well, human resources director, Amanda Perry, our public works director, Rob McNeil, and the school superintendent, Mike Kozort. And Dawn has been very helpful as the board representative to that. I think that's everybody on the group. I really hope I didn't miss somebody. If I did, I'm really sorry. But we have this call every day, and everybody reports in as to what they're doing. We have a all department head meeting every Monday or so for all the departments to check in. And as I think was noted, Amanda Perry, our human resources director, is doing a daily video for the town employees. It's posted on the town website. Anybody can watch it. It's really good. Gives a lot of information, and she tries to give uplifting messages as well. And that's the daily video. The board gets a daily situation report. I'm not going to do it on a Wednesday, hopefully, because you are getting your whole meeting dedicated to this. But it'll be back tomorrow. And one of the other things we've been working on is town budget and staffing update, and we're having ongoing discussions with the finance director. I don't know if you want to add anything to this, Brian, but we're looking at the potential revenue impact, the revenue decrease that we are going to experience in fiscal 21 and how we will close that gap. And we will have some options to present to the board over the next few weeks. And that'll need to be in advance of town meeting when we ever have town meeting. Brian, do you want to add anything to that? It's a little early on, but not really, because we're really starting to dig into how we're going to deal with it.
Libby, the only thing I'd like to add is that we started the preliminary analysis, as the town manager indicated. We're still waiting for some guidance from DOR on what they're going to be looking for in terms of planning for local estimated receipts. They're still working through it. I asked today if they had come up with any additional guidance, and at this point they don't have it. But I know that they're working on some guidance for the communities on their planning for local estimated receipts for 21. But as the town manager indicated, we are beginning the process of looking at it to try to anticipate what the changes how we may be impacted into fiscal 21.
Thank you, Brian. I think that's all town admin has to report right now for this.
Matt?
Yeah, I had a question. there's some restaurants that are would like to open. They haven't been able to get their inspections because the health department isn't opened. How do they handle that? And part of this is if they're not open, how do they can't access some of the state aid and federal aid that's in place for them. So what is the process for them to call to be able to at least do takeout and get their staff going?
Roberto?
Yeah, so that's definitely something that I've been talking over to my staff actually today. So one of the things that I'm looking to do is seeing when is the earliest time we can start and looking at doing this sorts of thing and trying to get some of these restaurants open, even if it is just that to go or the takeout or curbside delivery. It's difficult. So I'm going to try to work out a process with my staff and our emergency management team here on how to get that done. But it is definitely on our radar. I was asking, we were talking about it just a few hours ago, but it is definitely something we're working on to get them open so that they don't lose a lot of income. It's unfortunately, this is affecting everyone. But yeah, we're working on a process of getting them open. Mainly, most likely, it's going to be mailing in the required documents and then scheduling the inspections at a later date.
Yeah, and I think that would be great. None of them are going to be, they're going to get some income in, but they're going to try to keep. They have to be opened in order to, apply for some of these other loans and things that are available. So, I think if they haven't had issues in the past and they give you all the documentation and you can inspect them when you're open, I think that would be fine. And that at least would allow them to access some of the small business loans and other things that are available.
Absolutely. We're looking at all the abilities, all the possibilities.
Right, thank you.
They need to have their staff hired back to get the loan forgiveness. I hope that people are aware about all of the unemployment things out there. I'm sure maybe, I don't know if Christy maybe wants to make a couple comments because of the 1099 employees and so forth. Christy?
Yeah, I'm happy. I know that Jason and I went over this morning on Facebook, if anybody wants to watch that video. But we went over a lot of the resources to businesses. The SBA does have loans for sole proprietors, independent contractors, nonprofits, for-profit, basically every business, which also includes a $10,000 grant. If you apply, it's supposed to go within 3 days. So we'll see how fast the government works with that. And then there's also going to be a payroll protection plan program that is supposed to be rolling out this Friday through local banks. And so both of those options are to help small businesses. I agree with Matt. A lot of them are restrictive in terms of seasonal and if you've been open or what if you were about to open in April. So there are resources out there, but there are some holes. And then in terms of expanded unemployment, all independent contractors, 1099s, basically they've opened it up. Unemployment insurance is available. Right now, you cannot apply on the Mass unemployment insurance website. But hopefully, again, by the end of this week or early next week, those options will be available. And on top of that, the federal government will be providing $600 to those on unemployment per week. So to help subsidize, since unemployment is only 2/3 of your paycheck.
Thank you. Are we ready for public comments?
Let it roll.
Oh, Jason?
Yeah, I believe, Janet, a lot of those links to those programs that Christine mentions is on that resource page that you and Florencia are working on. And I think Christy at the Chamber also has a page that kind of separates it all out depending on what business you are. It's a lot of reading and a lot of looking at.
Janet?
Yeah, Christy and I share information with each other as it comes in. I get some from some sources. She gets some from some sources. And her webpage is more fulsome than the town's one because she's got a more comprehensive look at it, but the one that we've got on our site includes cultural organizations as well. Great collaboration.
Thank you. Who is monitoring the feed?
Do you want me to do it again?
I don't have it up, so if you could, that would be great.
Let me refresh. Yeah, I'll do the same as last time.
Okay, it is active now, but it may take a few minutes. Any other questions or comments in the meantime? Jason?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if maybe Rachel Gray can do this in a bit more detail, or possibly having Taylor Hilst on to talk about the really, really great programs and things that she's doing in her department as Health and Human Services. And just to highlight that for a couple minutes, I think would be great. And if it can't be Taylor, maybe Rachel can really dig in. I think it would be really, really nice to highlight what the town's doing and how they're working with the private and public sector. Maybe next week.
We could add that to the report here for Taylor next week. Sure. Good idea.
One question here. Why can't the select board issue the order? Why do we have to wait for the Board of Health?
Who wants to take that?
I would look to Lauren for that.
Lauren?
Yes, thank you. So I think the basic understanding from the governor's office was that they believe it's the Board of Health that has the ability to take particular actions to protect the public from infectious disease or the spreading of infectious disease. That's not to say that the select board or the town manager don't have authority, but we essentially have tried to do things the way that the governor's office suggested. And so we will ask the Board of Health to take this up. And as Roberto said, they can do it as soon as possible. It's certainly an emergency for purposes of the open meeting law. So just post whatever notice you're able and hold a meeting. Thank you.
Okay, I'm trying to keep up. Sorry if I can't get to all of these. Let's see. Wouldn't opening up restaurants cause an influx of workers from all over the country or from other places? So I guess that's a question on why are restaurants open, I guess, and more being open.
Roberto?
It's definitely a real thing. If we look into opening new restaurants, they're going to need staff to staff it. It's definitely something we're going to need to look at. It's part of the problem, and it's part of what we're trying to weigh. It's not a decision we're going to take lightly, and chances are we may actually decide against opening new restaurants. It's just a conversation that we need to have. Thank you, Alice. I know you're also stuck at home as well, but I'll be in contact.
Christy had a question or a comment?
I was just going to add that H-2B and J-1 visas are on hold right now. So it would hopefully not have an influx of people coming to the island, and hopefully restaurants would be trying to staff with, what they have for year-round staff. But there are a lot of seasonal businesses that would like to open, April 1st, not necessarily new businesses, but just seasonal. And like Matt said, they need to be open to get the loan. So I would hope that we wouldn't be preventing that.
I can think of a number of places that probably the staff that they would need to open takeout are here.
A lot of them do have staff that are already here. For example, I received an email from Oath, the manager and owner of Oath. He's saying he's using all on-island people, but they're not open yet. They need they need the permitting from us. So some do have staff already here, most don't.
And it's Matt. I was going to agree with Roberto. Some do have staff on island. They may have 4 or 5 kitchen people that are here already, so they have enough to do essential. They're not going to open their doors. They're not going to, be waiting tables or anything. So I just think, some people are fortunate and have them here. And the other thing is they can quarantine them. People, if they come from off, anyone that comes here to the state is quarantined for 14 days, supposedly. So.
Got 2 questions here. First one is, if someone is a resident from another state but gets a test on Nantucket, are they reported for Nantucket or their home community?
I'm happy to take that. So when we do testing, we report our positives that are done at our facilities.
This might be for Roberto in health. It's relative to Stop and Shop. Can you mandate some sort of face covering requirements if people need to go food shopping? There are reports of other countries requiring this to flatten the curve.
So can you clarify that? Requiring face coverings for the people going into the store or for the employees?
I think they're saying that people coming into the stores, but I guess it'd be good to, what kind of oversight does the Board of Health have with Stop and Shop? I know you're working with them on a daily, weekly basis.
That's a little bit tougher. We can definitely release guidelines for the people going in. It is a private business. They would have to set the requirement that if they're going to allow somebody to come in, you have to be wearing a mask. But I can't force somebody to wear a mask because that's a constitutional issue. But as far as releasing guidelines and things like that, we have. Florencia has pushed out a lot of information. Thankfully, Greg and Florencia have been really great. They created those cards on social media, and you can find them on the website, where we're saying that if you feel like you need to wear a mask, try not to use a mask that will interfere with what the hospital is getting. So if you're going to be, if you have surgical masks, if you have N95s, we do ask that you get those to the N95. N95s down to the hospital. We do ask that you give them to the hospital. But any sort of barrier that's between your nose and your mouth, any sort of barrier like that you can breathe through, can act as a filter. So we are, if you know how to make a mask yourself, make the mask. If you can get a mask that won't interfere with the hospital's functioning, then do so. But please don't hoard masks. Please don't take masks away from where the hospital has them. Right now, the reason we were asking people, and the CDC was asking people not to wear masks and hoard masks, was because PPE is an incredibly important factor for what the hospital and the hospitals across the country are trying to do. We're in a major shortage. So if you can make your own mask, please do. And we can release guidelines on it, but I don't know if I can force anyone to do so.
Thanks, Roberto. There's a suggestion here. Would you please consider posting all waivers granted under the various orders on the town website? Thank you. I don't know if we want to comment on that. I can go to the next question if you want.
Some of them are just on the telephone.
Yeah, we'll have to figure out a process to do that.
Next question, is the town going to be issuing permits for workers over the summer? Permits for high school students? Are people coming from other countries? I guess I'm assuming that's J1s and H2Bs.
Those aren't things that the town issues. So I'm not really sure how to answer that.
I think, like Christy said, those are on hold right now. I mean, there are a number of island businesses that were approved, but they're just in limbo. Embassies in other countries are closed as well.
Question here, if you have legitimate issues that need repairing, All we need to do is get permission by emailing the Board of Health. Sorry, that's a question.
Yeah, there is a process established in emergency order number 1. If it's a project that involves construction of a structure or on a structure, the appeal is made to the building commissioner. If it's a project that involves a road or road opening, it goes to the DPW director. And then they do a little research on it. They look for if there's ways to mitigate the need to do building versus something else. And then they will, if it's something that they think has potential, they then review it with the incident management team for a final decision as to how to proceed. But those are the 2 ways to get something. And part of the confusion we've had with these are people are just sending them to whoever they feel like it. They think may be most appropriate. And the end result is decisions are made and to grant somebody a waiver or not, yet nobody tells the police officers who are out there answering the calls when the neighbors are calling, so they don't know that a waiver's been issued. And they're going up to the job site and shutting it down, and they're saying, well, wait a minute, I was told I could do it. So has to go through the building commissioner or the DPW director as the initial point of contact for either one, for any kind of work.
Thank you. Jason, do you want to do like 2 or 3 more?
Sure. A lot more is coming in, so I'm sorry I'm not getting everybody. Could the hospital please release an aggregate number of assumed but not verified cases of COVID-19 they are monitoring? Given the scarcity of tests, that number would provide a better sense of prevalence.
Well, I can say that we are monitoring individuals that are sheltering at home. They are being followed by their primary care provider here. And we have a good amount of folks that are starting to recover, which is good news. We typically don't release those types of numbers, but I can check with our medical director on what that might be.
This question has come up a couple different times in different ways. If the boat is the linchpin in this, then why not have the National Guard at the boat? If you don't live here or aren't essential, then you're not going to be allowed on the boat. Can we address that again on why we address that?
Chief, go ahead.
Yeah, if I understood the question, somebody wants to know why we don't stop them at the boat. Is that it? Okay. Essentially, there's a 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution is the problem, and it makes it very difficult to move or to stop people from engaging in travel between states, interstate, et cetera. And so it's better to address the separation issues than try to just do a blanket stop. And some states have tried it. I think they're getting a lot of pushback. They'll probably be defeated on legal challenges. Other states have decided that absent a imminent public safety threat, like for instance, going into an area torn up by a hurricane or a tornado, they really don't have the authority to do that.
Thank you. Oh, Lauren, and then Matt.
I just wanted to add to that who gets to ride on the boat isn't something that the town of Nantucket gets to regulate. So passage over the waters of the Commonwealth are regulated by the federal government, TSA. And at this time, there's nothing that would allow us to prohibit, which would allow the boats to prohibit people from using them. One of the things that we have discussed, though, and that was definitely part of the discussion about to lead to what kind of ban is the right kind of ban, or what kind of order is the right order, was the understanding that having people coming and going from the island is one of the ways that it makes it more difficult to enforce the appropriate separation. particularly because it's difficult to do that on a boat if it's crowded. And so this way of dealing with things makes it very clear that there's a limited number of reasons people should be traveling, and also ensures that that the activities that people were coming for from off island are not ongoing at this time. So it's not as though that issue wasn't explored, I guess, is the takeaway from that. The best way to approach it was what was decided.
Yes, that has been asked a number of times. Matt, did you follow up?
I received an email or a text from a friend who was on the boat. I think we should look at our numbers. We should talk to the scutters and find out what the numbers really are. He was on the boat this morning saying there was about 30 people, and most of them were essential services coming over for FedEx and UPS, etc. So I'm not saying that's the truth or not, but we should make sure that we double check that. It may not be as bad as we thought.
Yeah, I agree. I think we should definitely have some verification on those numbers before the Board of Health meeting.
Just to comment a little about that, we get a little bit of a report daily from the police as to what is coming off the boat, a couple of different specific boats. And today's number was based on a visual observation with somebody actually counting people coming off. The Highline has not typically provided ridership numbers, but this is somebody going down to the boat and counting people coming off.
And it was a dramatic difference over the last 2 days.
That is what we are told, yes.
Yesterday was 11.
Yesterday was 11, today was close to 100. Definitely wasn't 30, but I'm not sure where the friend was on the boat, because that might have been a different boat.
Okay, should we take one more question, and then we'll have a report of the other questions to try and do some follow-up? Jason?
Yeah, there's a bunch of them here.
Or if you think there's a couple more that we need to go for it.
Yeah, there's a lot of comments too. People are asking me to read all the comments. I don't think I can get to them. Can DBAs register here in Nantucket apply for unemployment? That might be something that the chamber and Janet can maybe do in a separate, but that's, we've got a couple of those type of questions. This is, yeah, back to what you're saying.
The question. I didn't understand the question.
Can DBAs registered here in Nantucket apply for unemployment? I would assume yes.
I don't know.
Okay.
The business can't apply for unemployment, but the individuals could.
Rita?
Yeah, my question was, I had been reading that it's not so much the DBAs, but the sole proprietors. So sole proprietors can't apply. LLCs, depending on how you're taxed, can apply. If you're a W-2 wage earner, then you may be able to. So Christy, I don't know if that's in keeping with what you were saying, but that was my understanding, is that it's not so much the DBA, it's the structure of the business. And I think if you're a sole proprietor, I don't believe you can, but that may change or may be incorrect.
No, that is correct. Sorry, Don, to interrupt. But if you are a sole proprietor, you do have access to the SBA loans. So that would be another type of relief.
Thank you. Okay. Jason?
I think that's about it.
Okay. All right. We do now have a public comment portion of our agenda for any other items that are not related to this. I don't know that anyone's thinking about too much else, but I'll open that up in case anyone wants to send in a comment. If Jason could let me know. But we are closing the COVID-19 comments for this evening. Is there anything?
No, I think we're good. I just wrote on there from myself, anything we missed that will be passed on to the EOC in the town.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, we do have one new business item tonight. Stop and Shop has requested a noise waiver because with the additional stock, they have to keep their refrigeration trucks running to keep everything from spoiling. Am I detailing that correctly?
I believe so. Chief was going to explain. You're going to explain?
Go ahead.
Dawn, we've been getting complaints from people who live around there about the refrigerator trucks running all night. And as you recall, when they built the store, there was initially an issue, and we worked out an agreement, or there was an arrangement where they were 2 refrigerator trucks that are normally there overnight are plugged into the electrical circuits and allowed then to run off of electricity rather than the engines. But because they're 2 things are occurring. One is they've got more than 2 trucks a day coming over now because of the tremendous demand on the food and the resources. And 2, they don't have enough staff to unload the trucks, so they have to leave perishables in the refrigerated trucks overnight so it doesn't spoil, and they have to leave the engines and the refrigeration going. So we think there's no evidence that this is going to let up at all. It seems to have been pretty steady for 3 weeks now. And so we'd like to just give them a blanket waiver for the duration of this state of emergency so that we can stop, so that we can just tell the people that there's a waiver rather than having to send an officer every time.
Okay. Does someone want to make a motion to that effect?
Don, I'm going to abstain. I do business with them.
Okay.
Recuse.
Okay.
Make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Christy. Is there a second?
I'd second.
Thank you, Rita. By roll call vote, Christy Ferrantella.
Aye.
Rita Higgins.
Aye.
Jason Bridges.
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. So that's 4-0. Next item on our agenda, approval of minutes of October 2nd and March 25th.
I would move to approve.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor by roll call. Matt Fee.
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella.
Aye.
Jason Bridges.
Aye, and thank you for getting those done so fast.
Rita Higgins.
Rita, aye.
Don Holgate, aye. Those pass unanimously. Approval of treasury warrants.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call. Matt Fee.
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella.
Aye.
Jason Bridges.
Aye.
Rita Higgins.
Aye.
Don Holgate, aye. Carries unanimously. Approval of pending contracts.
There is one pending contract. It is an amendment to our landscaping contract for the public safety facility, but I would ask that we just put that off for now. That was actually not going to be work that would be done now anyway, but it was sort of had been pending out there because we were adding a facility to the main landscaping contract, but we can put it off because we're not doing anything.
Okay, so we'll just hold that until this order is done. Okay. Town manager's report. Review of 2020 committee, board, and commission openings.
Okay, so the right around now is when we typically start looking at committee, board, and commission openings. I'm just trying to get to it in the packet here. I'm not really used to doing the packet online, so bear with me for 1 second. Somewhere in here, there is is it in this packet, Erica? Committee stuff?
It is. If you open up the bookmarks, it's at the very end.
Okay. I don't even know what a bookmark is. So the committee appointments. Right now, we review our list of openings. So if people are interested in applying to be on a committee, board, or commission that is appointed, there is a list of what is available online. And there's, you know, it ranges from, just read some off, the Airport Commission, Board of Health, Capital Program Committee, Finance Committee, HDC Associate, Nantucket Affordable Housing Trust, Planning Board Alternate, Roads and Right-of-Way Committee, Zoning Board of Appeals, lots of different groups. We will be very shortly now notifying members whose terms are expiring as of June 30th. And then we'll be advertising in the newspaper for the committee openings, and there will be indication as to where you get the information, which is basically all on the town website. There's, we typically do these committee, we have a public hearing, 2 rounds of public hearings for review of the applications. The first public hearing would be on May 27th, and the deadline for getting applications in. The deadline is sort of a moving target, because while we try to have one merely so that we can get the applications into the board's packet, people can submit their applications after that, but for just administrative purposes, we try to have a deadline. So that deadline would be May 22nd for the May 27th public hearing. The next public hearing would be June 3rd, and the deadline for that would be May 29th. And then the board would make committee appointments on June 17th. And hopefully we will be back downstairs in our regular, comfortable meeting room by then. That is all.
Thank you. Hopefully people will fill out some applications.
Yeah.
Everyone's home. I did neglect a public comment that I actually have in an email. If we could just go back to that for a moment. This is from Emily Molden from the Nantucket Land Council, and I'm just going to read her words. As you are aware, the developers of Surfside Crossing have submitted an environmental notification form to MEPA, revealing a significant change in the proposed subdivision design. Their plan now includes 156 dwelling units with 18 condo buildings across the 13-acre site. I understand that the town administration and select board are already working to address this and plan to submit a comment letter to MEPA by the April 14th deadline. I believe Tucker's working on this, just to know. We appreciate your attention to this matter in light of everything else that is going on, and hope that your comments will echo your past concerns with the density of this project and express the need for local review of these significant changes, urging the state agencies to require that it be remanded back to Nantucket. Once again, thank you, Emily Molden, Nantucket Land Council. And just for the board, I believe that this will be on our agenda next week now. Is that correct, Libby?
Yes, we're going to try to get the letter ready. You gotta add that.
Okay. And then, sorry, to jump back.
Oh, sorry, one more thing. While we're on the public comment that we forgot about, we also forgot to mention that today is Census Day. And I meant to put this on, totally forgot about it, but people, trying to get the word out is really important for people to fill out the census. The census for themselves. You can do it online. It's really simple. So please, everybody do that.
You know, it is very easy to do it online. I did it the other day. Select board's reports and comments. Moderator consultation with select board regarding rescheduling the 2020 annual town meeting. So this is Sarah's turn, and I can see you.
Oh, good. Okay. So Sarah Alger, town moderator, pursuant to Massachusetts General Laws, chapter, I think it's 39, section 10A, I'm required to consult with you prior to postponing the annual town meeting. It's my intention to make a determination that public health and safety requires a postponement of the meeting. Currently, my authority is limited to a 30-day extension, so I'm proposing to postpone the meeting until Saturday, May 2nd at 9 a.m. There is legislation pending. It may pass hopefully this week that will allow me to do further extensions of up to 30 days. So the idea is that once we're continued to May 2nd, which obviously does not take us past the governor's current order, I would do a further consultation with you and a further extension. The date that we're currently looking at is Saturday, May 30th at 9 a.m., but we will be talking about that over the next 30 days. So that's it. Consider yourself consulted with.
Thank you, Sarah. You don't need any kind of a vote from us. Just
I don't think so. Lauren, are you satisfied with that?
She's saying, shaking her head, yes.
Yes, that's sufficient. Absolutely.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. Have a good night.
You too.
Discussion regarding rescheduling the April 14th, 2020 annual town election. Nancy, can you hear me? I can't see you, but go ahead and speak now.
Sorry, yes, I can hear.
So,
okay. So we have been discussing a date for the town election, I believe, of Tuesday, June 16th. Is that right, Libby?
Hold on. I think it was whatever that second Tuesday is. Yeah, I should have this in my memory.
The second Tuesday is actually the 9th.
Sorry,
but
yeah.
for some
I did, because we thought that would give you a little more time if we really do have town meeting on the 30th.
Right. So I think that's a good day. That absolutely works for us. If it's agreeable to everyone else, and we're able to do the thing I really wanted to discuss about that is the possibility of adjusting the polling hours. But if my understanding is correct, we are also allowed to postpone the election and not choose a date yet. Is that correct, Lauren?
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, that is correct. You don't have to choose a date right now. You can vote to postpone the date of the annual town election to a date no later than June 30th and decide when it is safe to, the Board of Selectmen actually decides when it is safe to call for that election to be held. And that decision has to be made at least 20 days prior to the date of the intended election. One of the benefits of the legislation that passed lately is that the ballots that you have prepared already can be used for that rescheduled election. So any person who wants to vote by absentee ballot or a person who wants to vote by early voting, meaning they don't have a reason for not wanting to vote in person, can request those from your office at any time after after the vote to postpone is taken. And so at least some of the process can continue to unfold while we're all waiting to see how we'll conduct elections in this brand new environment.
Thank you, Lauren. So I personally am fine with the board either choosing the date of June 16th or simply choosing to postpone and not setting a date. I'm fine with either way. But my understanding is that we don't need to repost the warrant unless we were going to change the polling location, which we're not going to do, or the hours. And the only thing that I thought it would be worth discussing, because as Lauren just said, the state is allowing early voting for this election, which it has never allowed for municipal elections before, in the hope of reducing the amount of physical presence at the polls, is that I think we should consider reducing the polling hours personally, because it is, the polls are open for 13 hours here. It's a 14-hour day, therefore, at least for our election workers, most of whom are older folk. And I personally would like to see a shorter day. We're allowed to have as short as 4, if my understanding is correct. Yeah. But I was thinking maybe 8. I just wanted to get the board's thoughts on that.
Madam Chair, if I may, before the board gets to discussions, the state law requires that the polls be open no later than 12 p.m. and be open for at least 4 consecutive hours. So the minimum amount of time is 12 to 4. After that, it's discretionary. And I agree with what the clerk indicated, that the goal of allowing for early voting here in this election, it's not early voting like some might be thinking, where you go to the clerk's office and you early vote there. This is actually early voting by mail. And the idea is that it will encourage more people to vote by mail so that more people get to participate, and also so that it'll reduce the number of in-person voting activity, or the amount of in-person voting activity. That is definitely something worth thinking about. And, you don't have to decide that right now. You could wait and see when how many absentee ballots are requested, or early voting ballots are requested, so you have a better idea as to whether the full 13 hours would even be required.
Jason?
When would the early voting be open? Would it be after we have the town meeting on the 30th, and then it opens up? Or could people vote before we even know what's voted on a town meeting?
They could vote before you even know it's voted on a town meeting.
Wow.
Yeah, I just would like to add in, I would be fine with also waiting, as Lauren just described, and seeing how things progress, even with the virus. I certainly don't like the idea of alienating any voters' opportunities to get to the polls. I'm just a little concerned about getting people to work at all. Hopefully all will be well then. That's certainly what we all wish. But I just think it might be better to have a shorter day, and we would have to prepare for some sort of physical distancing at the polls regardless, which I'm sure we can make plans for.
Christy?
I'm okay with waiting to make a decision until later, but two concerns that I just kind of thought of as we were discussing is, if we reduce the number of hours, would that be kind of encouraging more people to be in the same place at the same time? I think obviously you'd want to encourage the early voting. But if people didn't, I would be concerned that we'd be telling everybody to go to the school between 4 hours. And that would kind of go against what we're advocating for right now. The other concern is, if we are kind of, either in a new normal or things are starting to open up, having the different hours, you're really going to have different voter populations. So people who maybe work in restaurant industries and work the lunchtime wouldn't be able to vote between 12 and 4. And so having expanded hours really allows everybody to participate. So those are just two concerns I wanted to bring up to the board.
Yeah, I was thinking that we may want to push it as late as possible. So I think we should wait to make a final decision, especially with early voting. Why not have it as close to June 30th as we can?
Through the chair, if I could, I agree with what Christy was saying about a shorter time would encourage more people, but I would not propose 4 hours. I just would propose less than 13. That's my thinking right now, but I also agree with you, Dawn. We might as well delay that decision and see how things progress with both the virus and the early voting. But at a certain point, at least I believe 10 days in advance, we will have to repost the warrant if we change the hours.
Madam Chair, that decision should truly be made about 20 days ahead of time. That's what the statute, the Chapter 45 of the Acts of 2020 contemplates, is that the board, the clerk, the police chief, the Board of Health, the health agent, that you'll all discuss whether you think it's safe to move forward. And then if so, that you do it no later than 20 days prior to the date of the election. So that does leave a lot of time for people to vote early and by absentee. It also means that if people do want to vote in person, they'll know at least 20 days ahead what date that election will be held on. And the last day to register to vote is also will also change. It'll be 10 days before the date of the rescheduled election. So again, it's intended to allow as many people to participate as possible. Other deadlines, though, that have already passed are passed. So the only deadline that changes is the deadline to announce the new date, which is the 20 days, and the deadline to register to vote at that election, which is 10 days.
Jason, did you have a comment?
Yes, for Lauren and Nancy. I'm trying to think through, is there a scenario where voting could open up and then we decide, you know what, people just don't feel safe coming to town meeting, we're going to move it to July, but people have already started voting. Is there something that I'm missing, how that could work?
Yeah. So Nancy, if you don't mind, I'll jump in. Right now, the language in the special act, so there's another special act that's pending, or an act that's pending, a bill that would allow municipalities to delay their annual town meetings past June 30th if there's a declaration of a state of emergency and the warrant hadn't been posted. There's also language that allows for the moderator, and this is what I believe the moderator was referring to earlier, that would allow multiple recess and continuation orders to be issued if we're still in a state of emergency. And that legislation also allows the town to go past June 30th if needed with town meeting, and it would essentially result in a month-to-month 1/12 budget, the way that they currently do for cities that don't get a budget by June 30th. So that, and also the Division of Local Services and the Director of Accounts at the DOR have the ability to approve any necessary payments. So the town's finances, the town could continue to operate. It's also going to provide that free cash is still available and that revolving funds can continue to be used. So it's meant to provide a bridge, essentially, until when it's safe. The legislation that was adopted, Chapter 45 of the Acts of 2020, that refers to elections, only gives towns until June 30th. There was additional language originally that would have allowed it to be pushed off further, and that was taken out with the understanding that if we move forward in time and it still doesn't appear to be safe to hold these elections, that there will be a further bill that would allow an additional delay. So, I mean, I think, we'd obviously know more about that as we get closer to June, whether if, for example, the state of emergency and the governor's stay-home order and the non-essential business stuff was still in effect, it would not surprise me if that date gets pushed out. But right now, June 30th is the date. Now, if, let's say, voting had already started in person on election day, and we decided it wasn't safe, for that we would need to have a court order. But if people have voted by absentee or early voting, and we still push it out further, those votes will be counted as though they were, or those ballots will be counted as though they were cast, like any other ballot for the rescheduled election. So no one's vote is going to not be counted because of the day the election is held on. So absentee ballots can be mailed out, early voting ballots can be mailed out. And the only difference is that they're not going to be counted on the original day they would have been counted on. Now they won't be counted until the date of the rescheduled election, whenever that might be. And if for some reason there is required to be a third continuation, they will still be counted then. And also anyone who votes by absentee ballot has the ability to go to the polls on election day if they want to before their ballot is counted and vote in person. So yes, there will have been some amount of delay in theory, but people who voted by absentee ballot wouldn't be prohibited from voting in person if they wanted to change their mind.
Okay. So what do we need to do in terms of a motion tonight? Just to postpone?
Yeah, a motion could take a form similar to, in accordance with Chapter 45 of the Acts of 2020 and the declaration of state of emergency by the governor and the orders issued by the town of Nantucket, the April 14th, 2020 election shall hereby be postponed to a date prior to June 30th.
Okay. Does someone want to make that motion?
So moved.
For a second?
Second.
Thank you. By roll call vote, Matt Fay,
Aye.
Christy Parentella,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Rita Higgins.
Aye.
Okay. That Don Holgate, that passes unanimously. Committee reports.
Well, before Don,
Sorry, go ahead.
before we lose Nancy, if we were going to shorten it, is it the beginning of the day or the end of the day busier?
I would say, Matt, that the end of the day is actually busier normally here.
So if we were
The
shortening,
one thing,
yeah.
sorry to interrupt. The one thing that I don't know, I do know that 4 hours is required. I would never recommend that. 4 continuous hours starting at least by noon, as Lauren had said. But the one thing I don't know is, could you do 4 in the morning and 4 later in the day? I don't know. That would still mean I'd have to keep people there all day. I had been thinking of something maybe like 10 to 6 or 11 to 7. That was what was going through my head.
Okay. Oh, Jason?
Yeah, this question is for Nancy. Thanks, Matt, for bringing this back up. Is there a way that we can be creative and not require, but suggest, okay, A through N come in from 8 to 1 and from 1 to 6, the rest of the alphabet comes in. Are there creative ways that we can do that? Or is that pretty regulated with the state? That's a big no-no.
It's funny that you said that, because somebody in my family just asked me the same thing, but I'm quite certain that's a no-no, but I'd have to defer to Lauren on that.
Yeah. Thank you. So there's nothing in the law that says anything about that. I think the town has the ability to encourage people to not come all at the same time. So if it wanted to suggest that, that if people have the option that people from whatever to whatever come from a certain time, but certainly if they showed up at the wrong time, they would still get to vote. And I will mention that the early voting and the absentee voting, that's something that the state is hoping that towns encourage. And so, to post it on social media, make the application for an absentee ballot or for an early voting ballot available on a link on the website. And, just essentially think of other ways, maybe if someone does this is what happened this week video, that kind of stuff, that the word get out, that's an easy way to vote this year. And one more, and then I promise I'm done. The other thing is that the state law, that Chapter 45 of the Acts of 2020, also expanded what it means to be quote unquote disabled for purposes of absentee voting. If a person is afraid to vote in person on the day of the election because of the potential for being exposed to COVID-19 or exposing someone else, that is a legitimate reason for requesting an absentee ballot. That's considered to be you're physically unable to get to the polls because of your concern. So the legislation is very specific about that.
Okay. Does anyone have any committee reports aside from what we went over tonight? I don't think there's been any subcommittee meetings. Christy?
I just wanted to echo what Libby brought up earlier, that today is Census Day. And I've been on the Census Committee, and I know that Martha Turk has been trying to get information out. You can still fill it out past today, and we're encouraging everybody. Right now, we are lagging behind what we did in 2010. So encouraging everybody, it only takes a couple minutes. It doesn't ask a question about if you're a citizen or not. And so we're just encouraging everybody to go on and fill it out.
Thank you. Jason?
Yeah, I had a comment. I really like the HR videos from our HR director, Amanda Perry. A lot of it doesn't pertain to me, but I still watch it whenever it comes out. I really think each couple of weeks or each week we're doing a better job of getting more things out. And I hope that keeps evolving. So I like that. And, I listened to a really good talk the other day about 90% of a social distance isn't enough. 90% where it does it right, we're in big trouble. And Gary Shaw can talk about this. It's got to be 98, 99%. And that 1 or 2% is public safety officials and hospital, people who have to work no matter what, wastewater treatment facility staff. But 90, we can't do it 80 and 90%. It doesn't work. I just wanted to stress that. And then one other thing, I would be okay if we see fit, if the EOC and select board wants to adding an additional meeting on, because so many things happen so fast. Whether we move this meeting to Thursday and we have a quicker Monday meeting to spread it out, staff probably might not be able to do that, but there might be something there. So many things come out so fast, and it's hard to wait once a week for us to address them. Thank you.
Thank you. Matt?
Yeah, a friend sent a suggestion, which I thought was, give it to the EOC and to Don. And this is happening in Telluride. We have a lot of connections on Nantucket with the pharmaceuticals industry and other people. I don't know the names, but people are out here that we don't even know. And what his suggestion was is that we ask, we're an island, we're a great potential subject for testing because you have a set amount of people and you could test the entire populace here. A homeowner in Telluride is doing that. And it isn't just for testing now, but it would be for antibody testing, which is in development right now. So I don't know how we would do that, whether it be an article in, the Boston Globe or the New York Times, or just offering Nantucket as a test place to do that testing. It sort of makes sense. And I think people want to help and want to be able to do that. And that we would have enough probably to be a sample for the rest of the United States. So it was a suggestion that was given to me. I didn't want to lose.
Harry, do you want to say anything in regard to that?
I would. Actually, it is a question that's come up. It's been posed to me in a number of different ways. There can be value in understanding through a representative sample or population testing how much virus or illness is circulating in a community. And I know that there are donors even on this side of the country that are willing to help with that. The challenge right now is just having enough tests available to be able to do that type of testing. Abbott Labs came out with a new machine with cartridges that can do testing, but I will tell you that I've called influential people that I know have called. There's 50,000 phone calls waiting for that right now. So I think as time goes on and testing becomes more available, we'll start to see some sampling like that. We have reached out to the data project to help us understand if we were to do or had the capability to do some sampling or testing, how that would work so we could have a randomized sample. And so we're waiting for some of that information to come back. It does create a curious question, and if we were able to do that, we'd want to know then how we would use that information, to understand how we could navigate the population exposure question in a different way. So more to come on that as we start to see how we could do sampling and as the testing becomes more available nationally.
Great. Anything else? Is there a motion to adjourn?
No.
Sorry, public hearing. Sorry. I'm not used to that order. We do need a motion. I will open the public hearing for the Historic District Commission appeal for 112 Wawanet Road, and we have a request to continue it to May 13th. Could I have a motion to do so?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. By roll call, Matt Fee,
Yes.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Rita Higgins,
Aye.
John Holgate, aye. That is continued by unanimous vote. Now, motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor by roll call, Matt Fee,
Aye.
Christy Ferrantella,
Aye.
Jason Bridges,
Aye.
Rita Higgins,
Aye.
John Holgate, aye. Thank you all. It's getting a little smoother. See you soon or next week.
Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you.